Hey, Hawkeye fans, Chad Leistikow of the Des Moines Register, along with Tyler Tachman of the Des Moines Register. We are here to recap the Hawkeyes' 16-13 loss at Jack Trice Stadium to the Iowa State Cyclones. As you can see, I'm outside here at the Jacobson Building here in Ames. Still, I just finished filing kind of like the quoted version of my 5 thoughts, Tyler. We really haven't had much time to talk to each other, so this will be our chance to do that while people filter in. So why don't you give me your initial thoughts on kind of what unfolded here today?
We learned some stuff about this Iowa team. It felt like the Albany game was we were still feeling things out. I felt like we learned some good stuff, some bad stuff, and it looks similar to the Iowa teams that we've seen as of late in that I guess starting with the good was that Iowa's defense, I thought rose to the challenge. There's new faces on there. We didn't know exactly what it was going to look like, and they took an Iowa State offense led by Rocco Beck that is certainly capable and made them look pedestrian at best. So that's the good news. The bad news is that I don't think Iowa's passing game is as far along as people were hoping at this point. Mark Gronowski, he looked better than he did against Albany. Was it good enough? It wasn't. And he didn't get enough help around him either in terms of the receiving game. But overall, to me, the running game looked like a more watered down version of last year. There was no Caleb Johnson. It was still kind of what Iowa relied on, but the passing game that I think we kind of hoped that it was going to be further along at this point, that it was going to be more explosive, that the receivers were going to take an emphatic step forward, and a lot to unpack in this game. Obviously some nuances that kind of led to the way that it ended up, but ends up being almost like a deja vu of last year, basically with Kyle Conradi hitting the game-winning field goal. A little bit of a different circumstances, but that's how it finished up.
Yeah, Gronowski finishes. The numbers were 13 for 24 for 83 yards last week, 8 for 15 for 44 yards. Some quick math in my head tells me he is 21 for 39 for 127 yards as an Iowa quarterback, 2 games in. Long pass of 22 to his credit. Boy, I thought he would be much better than this. We cautioned people that he might not be, up to speed early in the season, but this is still, they get the ball, still a minute 52 to go, at their own, where were they, 25-ish yard line, and did nothing, went backwards. Gronowski takes 2 sacks, throws a, wild incompletion in the game, and that was it. I mean, Iowa was still down 3, Tyler, with a chance to win the game, and the highly paid quarterback just, they just didn't do anything on that possession. So to me, you work on these 2-minute drills. We can get into like the whole what led to that, but I felt like the 2-minute drill was really disappointing, and just felt like a lot of past years with Iowa quarterbacks where it's like, okay, can they even get in field goal range? Deacon Hill, think back to the Cooper DeJean fair catch thing, all Deacon Hill had to do was like lead him to like a first down, and they could have won that game 13-12. And today you really felt like you just needed 25, 30 yards to give Drew Stevens a chance to tie it. And they didn't really, they went backwards. So really disappointed. I feel pretty disappointed about Gronowski again.
The best drive of the day for Iowa offensively was when they just went down 13-3, and then Iowa goes down almost like the length of the field, scores a touchdown. I thought that was a great response because then it made it 13-10 going into halftime. It felt like Iowa had grabbed some momentum, and then those instances just didn't happen frequently enough. They were far too fleeting, and I feel like that's kind of emblematic of like what we saw with Cade McNamara at times, where there would be these kind of flashes of a drive here or there during a game that they kind of put things together, and then it wasn't able to be sustained. And then you have the pick that Mark Gronowski threw that ended up being really costly. Was it Caden Weegen's fault? I mean, he deserves some blame for it. I don't know.
It looked like Weegen's fault. Based on the post-game answers, it felt like he threw the ball where he was expecting Weegen to be, and it was intercepted, and that led to Iowa State's only touchdown. Like, I'm not going to put that one on Gronowski, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, I have to look back at it again, but the route was jumped, so who knows? It might have been picked.
Fair.
of
Yeah.
whether Regent falls down or not. So, but anyways, that ends up being a huge turning point because Iowa State turns that into 7 points. And then on the other side of things, when Iowa caught a break with the muff punt, which that
Yeah.
felt like that could have been a seismic turning point. Iowa just gets 3 points out of it and not a touchdown. So those are the types of things where you would hope Iowa's offense would be able to kind of turn the corner in that sense of if they have those opportunities to take full advantage of them rather than just kicking the field goals. That's what happened last season against Iowa State when, I mean, Jay Higgins had an interception and they weren't able to turn it into a touchdown. It's like kind of settling when they have those opportunities in front of them. And to me, I thought the defense played really well. I think this was the offense failing the defense to hold Iowa State to 16 points. They made Rocco Becht, who was 19 of 20 last week. And I know it was against a lesser opponent, but to hold him to what they did, that a defense that we were still kind of hoping to learn some stuff about. I give Iowa's defense a lot of credit. I just think the offense did not do enough, even close to enough to really, I mean, show the firepower that was needed.
Yeah, the offense is a little bit complicated to evaluate today, even though we know it was subpar. Okay, I would acknowledge that for sure. And the start was terrible. I didn't like what TJ Washington gave him in the run game. I thought that got them off to a really poor start. Just easy to tackle. I think he had 1 yard on each of his first 3 carries. There was a drop in there from Jacob Gill. There was an injury to Addison Ostrenga. A lot of stuff went wrong early on. Xavier Williams just didn't look the same as he did last week. And finally, Jazz Patterson kind of was the answer in that run game. He ends up with 11 carries for 60 yards. But I will say that it was an awful start. And then after they tied up at 13, which was, again, it was another 16-play drive, Tyler, that got them tied up. Now, yeah, it would have been great if they could have got a touchdown there, but Dunker went out on that drive. It was starting to get a little bit messy, and I think they probably settled a little bit there for the field goal. They could have gone for it, but I understand wanting to tie it up, thinking your defense is going to get you off the field. And Iowa only got one possession except for the final gasp. One possession after that, Tyler, because Iowa State did do a good job of holding the ball. Iowa's defense played solid, but it also Iowa didn't get off the field enough, to get its offense a chance to. It looked like Iowa was wearing down Iowa State's defense, and then Iowa State kind of took a little bit of control back, I felt like, from Iowa's offense. So it was sort of you would have liked to have seen this play out a little bit, I don't know, longer. I mean, Iowa just didn't have – Iowa basically had 1 1/3 possessions, the rest of the way. So it was, they kind of surged back, but it just they ran out of time. So because they fell behind so much.
Yeah. And I mean, Iowa's not a team that can play from behind. Once they got to 13-3, I was kind of like, oh, this could start to go really badly, and credit to Iowa for kind of climbing back into the game. But maybe the play of the game was that third down when Iowa State had the ball. It was a bad pass by Rocco Becht. It was tipped, and then Iowa State came down with it, and that extended the drive. So that might have been – that was the turning point because it led to the Kyle Conradi field goal that ended up winning it. So that was just kind of a stroke of bad luck for Iowa, but that's the type of situation where you kind of have to make better luck for yourself. And, as an offense, you take more advantage of the opportunities when you get them and score touchdowns instead of field goals, to where Iowa State has to drive down and score a touchdown on that final drive rather than just a field goal. And Iowa's defense was in some tough situations in the first half.
Yeah,
with,
they were.
Whether it be Reese Dakin's first punt wasn't very good, and Iowa State started at its own 45-yard line, or the turnover. So credit to them for, they only giving up 13 points in the first half, but they really kind of had their backs up against the wall at some points.
Yeah, Kirk Ferentz now 0-10 in his last 10 games against ranked teams. That's not good enough. I mean, I asked him about that after the game. He said, thanks for reminding me. We fell 3 points short today. And, they got to win one of these ranked games at some point. I mean, even the Missouri game and the Music City Bowl, I felt like they had that one, had a real good chance to win that, couldn't. They've been blown out a lot. So just felt like this is a little bit of more of the same, for, Iowa football trying to take that next step as a program. So in general, I understand the disappointment out there. Obviously, this doesn't, doesn't limit Iowa's chances for going on a run in Big Ten play, but knowing all the ranked teams coming up, I mean, Indiana in a couple weeks, Penn State, Oregon, like it doesn't give you a ton of confidence that they can do it. I did feel, I guess if you're looking for a positive spin, I mean, the defense looks like it's going to be a decent Phil Parker defense again. And if they can get the, get the passing game off the floor a little bit more to go with this running game, they could be decent. But they're just not quite where they needed to be this part of the season. And now it's going to be a real uphill climb to try to make that playoff run that they were hoping for.
And credit to, I thought TJ Hall had a really good game, as we've kind of heard about him making that step, leading into the season. I thought he played well. Cohen Entringer played well. Jaden Harrell forced a fumble, even though Iowa didn't recover it. But I thought there were some real encouraging things on the defensive side. And in terms of like what it means moving forward, Iowa's got to show some growth in the passing game that they haven't the last couple of seasons. Like, this looks very similar to where Iowa was at a year ago and 2 years ago, passing the ball, and like defensively too. Can they actually show growth throughout the season? Because, some of it was limited due to injury, but Iowa just hasn't been able to like show that significant progress on a consistent basis from where it started at. And my question is like, is Iowa going to be able to do that this season? Like, it's like there's flashes of the passing game. I think also what's a little concerning to me is the lack of like deep passing game. It's a lot of just short stuff. And I understand that you kind of have to pick and choose your spots, but like there's just not much of a deep threat at this point. It's a lot of underneath stuff. And there's just not enough firepower offensively to where if I'm a defense and I'm going against Iowa's offense, I'm like, okay, we need to respect the passing game. To me, it's still very much a one-dimensional offense.
Yeah, except for the last drive. I mean, Gronowski had a ton of time to throw all day long. He almost had too much time to throw, honestly, because they were just dropping in coverage, and I think they were trying to figure all that out. There's a lot of discourse in the chat about why are we talking about playoffs? They're not going to win 5 games this year. But if Iowa had won this game, obviously your season's on a totally different track, and there's going to be improvement. I mean, there's going to be improvement for this team. There always is. As the year goes on, but this is why this game was so important for the trajectory of this season. Now you're just sort of trying to hold on. Obviously they're going to beat UMass next week, and then comes Big Ten season. So, where are the receivers? Sam Phillips had 1 catch, 1 target today for 15 yards. They threw to Jacob Gill a lot, but there wasn't much from Seth Anderson. I don't think KJ Parker. I don't even remember seeing him out there. Weechin, I thought, just didn't really play very well. He had the unsportsmanlike to start the game. That was a terrible tone-setting play. You could argue whether it's, borderline to throw that flag or not, but you just can't put yourself in that position in these things. And, Dakin shanks the punt, and Iowa State gets an easy field goal with just a couple first downs on the first drive and sets the tone. So, I don't know, it just wasn't the complete game that I thought we might see from Iowa today. I think if they just play a little bit more complete, they would have won the game, but they didn't, and they're just not a great team right now just yet with this quarterback.
Not that it would have solved all of Iowa's problems, but I feel like you really miss Reese Vanderzee of like kind of a bigger body receiver. Iowa just doesn't have someone with that frame in the wide receiver room right now that's capable. It's a lot of kind of more undersized guys. I don't feel like there's someone that you can really like throw a jump ball up to and feel really good about them making a play. But, we saw and heard about the wide receiver growth leading up to this season, and it hasn't played out as well as I thought it would be the first 2 games of the season. And like, I don't think Mark Gronowski deserves all the blame. I think he played better than he did against UAlbany. I mean, it was a fairly low bar to clear, but I think he could get more help from his receivers. I think it's a joint venture with the receiving game and quarterback play. And now just with the loss, Iowa, if they want to make something notable out of this season, the margin for error just got slimmer. I mean, now you're talking about if Iowa, it might seem crazy to talk about the playoff conversation, but that's kind of the tension in the season. Like, is Iowa a playoff team? They probably need to be at 9-3 to be in the conversation. That means that they can only lose 2 games the rest of the way, which means that you need to take at least one from Penn State, Oregon, and Indiana, and then need to get everything else or win 2. So there's just the pathways to get to that, 9-win mark at this point. It's just it's going to be difficult. So it just makes kind of the route. If Iowa wants to make something notable out of the season, they're going to have their work cut out for them the rest of the way.
Yeah, as you can imagine, after a loss, salty 3-word headlines today. Chris Douglas, Kirk should retire. Phil Hemming, neither team great. A lot of anti-Ferentz sentiment again today. Mile High Parlay, $1 million turd. I think people are disappointed what they're getting on the investment for the $2 million man, Mark Gronowski. I guess in general, Ferentz after the game praised Gronowski, and this is going to be the subject of my post-game column that'll come out tomorrow morning. But I know it's hard to get too excited about praise. Mark made growth, that just kind of falls flat when you lose a rivalry game like this and throw for under 100 yards.
Yeah, and you hope again that there's going to be growth, but the last couple of seasons it hasn't been there. And I think that's where Mark Gronowski can separate himself, is being able to get better as the season goes on. That's something that Iowa hasn't been able to do in the passing game. Another note that, it doesn't play a huge role in the win or loss, but Iowa ran some slow mesh, which is what Warren Ruggiero kind of orchestrated at Wake Forest, which is like a really slow version of a RPO. It's like a very unique kind of style, and Iowa sprinkled it in. So that was interesting to see, of like kind of the evolution of Tim Lester's offense and kind of modernization. We'll see how much Iowa kind of utilizes it the rest of the way. That was just an interesting wrinkle to see play out. But this was, we wanted to see year 2 in Tim Lester's offense, like, can they make that jump in the passing game? And so far, it hasn't been emphatic. There's still time. And I feel like I don't know if we maybe underestimated the loss of Caleb Johnson, but like I felt the loss of Caleb Johnson. Yeah. I felt like for the first time, Iowa really felt his departure, because they could have used a guy that could have just gashed the defense and, got the running game, like taking one of those long runs, right? Like Iowa didn't hit one of those like real long explosive runs that we had kind of gotten used to Caleb Johnson doing. And like I said, it felt kind of like a watered down version of last season's run game. It's not that the run game was bad, but like it just didn't have that explosion as last season. And when you have that coupled with the fact that the passing game still isn't very good, then that's obviously going to tether you down in what you can produce offensively.
Yeah, there's so many. There's 500 plus headlines here. So Eric Pauly has one interesting. Start Hank Brown. That's a sentiment that's already growing. It's worth at least a discussion here. Obviously, Iowa's not going that direction, but how long do would he be better for this passing offense? Does it matter? Because every quarterback that plays in this passing offense seems to struggle. I think Dargan Southard, our colleague, he did a numbers column, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dargan, in the chat, but Gronowski, before he started his Iowa career, threw for less than 100 yards 3 times. 2 of them were in blowouts, and once was in Iowa City against the Hawkeyes in a 7-3 loss. But even so, he threw for more yards in that game, that 7-3 game, than he did today in this Iowa State game. So, so now he's got numbers 4 and 5 under 100 yards passing. So, and Iowa's, to your point, Tyler, Iowa's longest run today was 13 yards, and that was on a keeper by Gronowski right after the punt muff. That was the first play after the punt muff to end the first quarter. Patterson's longest gain was 10. Xavier Williams' longest was 9. Terrell Washington's longest was 3. So really not much from – the run game was just not as good as I thought it was, could be against this defense. Credit to Iowa State. They did a good job bottling Iowa up. Good tackling and, kept Iowa from getting those big plays, because the defense kept Iowa State from big plays too. Injury-wise,
it didn't sound encouraging about Addison Estrenga, who exited the game. Kirk Ferentz didn't have like concrete updates, but it didn't sound good about his status. He sounded much more optimistic about Jennings Dunker, who left briefly, came back in the game. So if you're Iowa, you hope that he'll be good moving forward. But Addison Estrenga, he's had a hard time dealing with injuries. That's another kind of hit to the passing game. And I mean, I feel like Iowa's tight ends too. I don't know. I feel like, you could lump the quarterback play, tight end play, and wide receiver room kind of all together in that passing game as just not being good enough.
Estrenga could redshirt. He hasn't used a redshirt year yet. Obviously, he could have gotten a medical anyway, but he could definitely use a redshirt year. So if it is season ending, which it sounds like it probably will be, that might be on the table, but that's a long ways off, obviously. Any final thoughts, Tyler, as we get back to writing to finish our pod?
No, I mean, I thought Iowa played like – I don't feel terrible about the way they played. I know that there might be some people that disagree with that. I think the passing game issues overshadow, the game that Iowa played. But, like, they went into a hostile environment, rivalry game. I thought showed some fight against a team that's ranked in the top 25, down 13-3, and clawed their way back. Like, I felt like we learned some encouraging things about where I was at, about the defense. There's just going to need to be growth, and particularly in that passing game. But I thought, and again, this is kind of a glass half full take, but it could have been a lot worse, and it looked like it was trending to be a lot worse. But there were some good things on defense and special teams that we saw about Iowa.
All right, I got to get going, so we're going to close it up now. Chad Leistikow, Tyler Tachman, talk to you later.